Hello everyone, welcome to Fairly Based. I'm your host Henry, and today I thought I'd show you guys how I paint Tyranid Genestealers in my Coconut Crab scheme. If you didn't see my last video, I showed you guys how to execute the scheme in general on some Hormigons, but the Genestealers are so weird with their split carapace and everything that the regular scheme looks a little wrong on them. So without further ado, please like and subscribe, and let's get into the video. I started by giving my models a prime with Wraithbone. I used a spray primer because I had it on hand, but you can also just airbrush an alternative paint, which I'll talk about here in a second. Once everything is primed, I go ahead and block out all the claws and nails with Leviathan Blue contrast paint. You can also do the teeth here if you build it with the regular head, but I built them with the Ymgarl heads because I think they are objectively the better way to go. Now, I didn't get this part on video because I didn't realize my phone wasn't recording until after I had already primed everything, but if you'd like, you can go back and watch my last video where I'll show you how to do this step. But if you haven't seen that, I used my airbrush to apply some Army Painter Royal Cloak to all the blue areas. I had to get these guys finished up quickly for a game that day, so I wasn't as careful as I could have been. I definitely think they look better with only part of the claws highlighted like I did in my last video. But the Tyranids are a horde army at heart, so you can worry about anything you'd like to change on the next squad. For example, a lot of my bugs have a blue-colored head, so I airbrushed the foreheads with Royal Cloak, but I learned the next time it will probably just be quicker to block it in with a brush. When you're done cleaning out your airbrush, clean up any overspray you had. You can use Wraithbone, but recently I watched a Ninjon video where he recommended a paint called Golden High Flow Acrylics Titan Buff as an alternative. I tried it out, and I have to say that it immediately replaced Wraithbone in all my painting projects. It's not only airbrush usable, it's ready straight from the bottle. It is so smooth with no chalkiness and is much cheaper than Wraithbone. It's a near color match for your Wraithbone spray, so by the time you wash your model, you'll almost never know the difference. I only use a GW spray to prime because their sales department is more devoted to excess than Slaanesh, and I will not let a $20 can of paint go to waste. After everything is cleaned up, take some Army Painter tanned flesh and put that down across the outer half of each carapace area. The scheme usually works in thirds to make a more natural looking gradient, but since we're cutting out the Wraithbone on the carapace, we'll go in halves. Keep in mind that there are 5 distinctive carapace areas, both sides on the back, one on the head, and these small plates at the hip. However, the Genestealer sculpt is really interesting in that it allows you to put carapace patterning wherever you want and it won't look off, especially if you're using the older sculpt. I think it could be really interesting to see a Genestealer with a pattern everywhere, so let me know if you guys want a video on that. I had to get these guys done fast, so I took this time drying to lay down a coat of Blood Angel's Red contrast paint to the tentacles on the head, but if you're batch painting, using the regular heads, or just overall more patient than me, this step can happen really whenever. My color scheme integrates a lot of red into the larger and more interesting models, so I like to paint these central spines with Army Painter Pure Red. I also paint the small bumps on the head using a detail brush, and added highlights to the tentacles. After that, block in the other half of the carapace with your dark brown of choice. My personal favorite is a mix of Army Painter Dirt Splatter and black, with thinner already added. In truth, I have no idea what the ratio for this mix is, but I have to mix up some more soon, so I'll let you know in one of my next videos. Following that, go back to your tanned flesh and place dots of paint along the border between tan and brown, as well as some dots going into the brown. You can go as far as you'd like into the brown, but there is a happy medium between having everything too jumbled together and too separate where we get this really neat gradient. Then rinse and repeat with your dark brown mix back into the tan. I might have gone a little overboard with the dots, but I'm happy with them. I've always loved the concept of Genestealers and lore, but thought the previous model didn't quite do them justice. I was ecstatic when the new kit came out. I absolutely love all the dynamic poses that it brings, and it is fairly reasonably priced by GW standards, since you can make 2 smaller squads out of 1 box. They did take me a bit of time to build, but it was totally worth it. Once you're done with your dotting and you've touched up any areas you accidentally got paint on, grab some Games Workshop Seraphim Sepia and thin it with a bit of water before generously applying it to the whole model, excluding any blue or base areas and the red on the face. I've been asked this before, so yes, you do put this over the red on the back spines. An area I've found particularly needs a little extra attention is the back. The wash tends to run into the sides and pool there in the center part instead of in between the bone-looking plates, but it really does look cool once you get it to stay. Definitely make sure you're on top of the wash before you put it on. It tends to pool weirdly on any Tyranid model. If you haven't already and you're using Seraphim Sepia or a different GW paint, please transfer it to a dropper bottle. It's very cheap to buy an empty dropper and it is just so much better. I'll make a video on how to do that soon, but there are quite a few tutorials out there already. Please, just trust me. As you can see, this wash brings a lot of definition to our main body and spices up the carapace colors with a nice orange and near black color. After that to dry, take some red tone and paint all the fleshy vents and joint areas. I talked about in my last video that you can use Volupus Pink Contrast paint instead because it has a lot better coverage, and I would recommend this for larger areas and tongues, but while they are close, I do like the look of the red tone more. I did a thinned coat of the red tone into the grooves on the hands, feet, and such just to pay a little homage to the classic Leviathan scheme for the older Genestealers. No, they weren't great, but they did carry us for a long time. I also take this time to put some thinned red tone on the head to help blend the blue and red together. Again, not something you'll have to deal with unless you use the optional Ymgarl heads. Then take some dark tone and drop it into the recesses where the carapace plates overlap to bring some definition to the model when you're looking at it on a table from a few feet away. When you put this on your model, it will look like you just applied straight black, but don't worry, just let it dry and it turns into a very translucent gray that makes a very convincing shadow. I also dropped it into the darker spots between the tentacles on the face to make the tentacles pop. This maybe looks more realistic, but I really like high contrast, so I ended up coming back in with some Grim Black speed paint to darken them up further. I also used this Grim Black to fill in the eyes. And that's the main model painted. Make sure you paint the tactical rocks and decorate your bases, and you have yourself some pretty nice looking Genestealers. I didn't get it on video, but for a squad leader I painted the whole head red and then added some Royal Cloak highlights all over the model. I thoroughly enjoyed painting up these guys and look forward to doing more, as well as playing around with them more. I still have the other 5 to paint if I want to make them a full squad, and I definitely see myself getting more in the future. I can't wait to get these guys onto the tabletop now that they're all painted up and ready for biomass. And that brings us to the end of the tutorial. I hope you were able to get something out of this video, and if you did, I would greatly appreciate it if you did all the YouTube things, like subscribing and hitting the like button. I have big plans in the works for this channel, but it's only possible with your help. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.